You've probably noticed that lately, protein is having another major moment in the health world. High protein diets, protein powders, protein bars, and snacks. It's everywhere. But does protein actually matter more as we age? How much protein do men actually need after 50? Can you eat too little? Can you eat too much? I'm Sandy, and I'm 56. And in this video, I'll break down what I've learned after decades of training, experimenting, and studying nutrition without the hype, extremes, or fear-based messaging. Lately, protein intake has become one of the biggest conversations in health and fitness. And honestly, I understand why. As we age, muscle mass naturally declines. Recovery slows, strength becomes harder to maintain, and energy can become less stable. Protein plays an important role in all of this. However, like most nutrition conversations these days, the topic has become extreme and, in my opinion, overly simplified. Depending on who you listen to, protein is either the answer to everything or it's destroying your health. I think the conversation needs a little more nuance. I've been around long enough to watch nutrition trends cycle through the same patterns over and over again. High carb diets, low fat fads, the low carb craze, and so on. Currently, depending on the crowd, protein is either being worshipped or demonized. In reality, none of the three macronutrients are inherently bad. Protein, carbohydrates, and fats all serve important functions in the body. What usually matters more are quality, quantity, lifestyle, and context. And arguably, context matters most after 50. As an athlete, I first took an interest in nutrition in my late teens to improve my swimming performance. For over 35 years, I've experimented with a lot of different ways of eating. High carb, high protein, low fat, endurance focus, muscle building emphasis, plant-based, you name it, I've tried it. After all of my experimenting, I've come to believe this. Most men over 50 don't need extreme diets. They need balance, consistency, and enough quality nutrition to support their health and activity level. Protein is part of that equation, but certainly not the entire equation. So let's talk about why protein matters. Protein supports muscle maintenance, recovery, hormone production, immune function, satiety, and overall tissue repair. And after 50, maintaining muscle becomes increasingly important. Not just for aesthetics, but for strength, mobility, metabolism, injury prevention, and independence later in life. Many men either consistently undereat protein or swing to the opposite extreme and build their entire diet around it. Both approaches can create problems. So let's start with too little protein. A lot of men over 50 simply aren't getting enough, especially if they're active. Maybe breakfast is just toast or cereal. Lunch is quick and often processed. Dinner is carb heavy with very little actual quality protein. Over time, inadequate protein intake can contribute to these things. Reduced strength, increased hunger, low energy, slower recovery, and the big one, loss of muscle mass, which contributes to difficulty maintaining a healthy body composition. This becomes more noticeable as we age because the body becomes less efficient at building and maintaining muscle tissue. In addition, many men drift away from regular exercise. According to research, only about 20 to 30% of men over 50 exercise regularly enough to meet positive aerobic and muscle strengthening outcomes. Now let's go to the other side. Too much protein can also be problematic. This is where nuance matters. There are men consuming massive amounts of protein because social media fitness culture tells them more is always better. Multiple shakes a day, protein bars, protein snacks, protein enhanced everything. At some point you have to ask, are we still eating food or just consuming manufactured products? Extremely high protein intake can crowd out other important nutrients, fiber, and whole foods. It can also create digestive issues, especially when intake relies heavily on processed supplements and animal products. Depending on the individual, excessive intake may place unnecessary strain on the body, namely the kidneys, liver, and heart. Now, does this mean high protein is automatically dangerous? No, context matters. A highly active strength athlete has very different nutritional needs than a sedentary office worker. That's why I think rigid one-size-fits-all recommendations are problematic. So how much protein do men over 50 actually need? Well, generally speaking, most research suggests older adults benefit from somewhat higher protein intake, especially if they want to maintain muscle and stay active. Most experts land somewhere around 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, or roughly 1.2 to 2.0 grams per kilogram of body weight, depending on activity level. But again, context matters. If you're sedentary or 40 pounds over your ideal weight, these should be taken into account. You'll likely need less protein. So for example, if you're currently 180 pounds, but your goal is to be 160 pounds, your target protein would roughly be 0.7 to 1 gram times 160 pounds, which is about 112 to 160 grams of protein. If your exercise volume is low to moderate, then around 112 grams should be sufficient. If you strength train regularly, walk daily, recover well, and want to maintain muscle, you probably need more protein, so you'd aim for the upper end at about 160 grams. And if you're dealing with certain medical conditions, your needs may be different again. The point is not obsessing over exact numbers. The point is understanding that protein matters more as we age, but balance still matters too. Personally, I focus less on chasing massive protein targets and more on eating enough quality protein consistently throughout the day. I also try to get most of it from real food. For me, that includes things like legumes, tofu, hemp protein, nuts and seeds, high-quality non-dairy yogurt, and whole, minimally processed foods. Other people may choose fish, eggs, dairy, or lean meats. Again, there isn't one perfect approach. What matters is whether your way of eating supports your energy, recovery, strength, digestion, and your long-term health. And that brings me back to the bigger picture. Nutrition after 50 shouldn't become a religious debate. You don't need to fear carbs. You don't need to fear fats. And you don't need to obsess over protein. You need all three macronutrients as they each play important roles. The smarter question is this: what balance helps you feel and function your best? That answer will look a little different for everyone. If you're over 50 and trying to improve your health, start with these basics. Eat enough high-quality protein. Eat real food most of the time, including healthy carbs and fats. Strength train regularly. Manage your stress and get plenty of sleep. And finally, above all else, stay consistent. These things aren't flashy, but they matter. In future posts, I'll go deeper into protein quality, timing, plant versus animal sources, muscle maintenance, and how nutrition changes as we age. If you want more conversations about fitness, nutrition, mental health, and recovery for men over 50, you're welcome to subscribe. Thanks for being here.